I'm going to start off just by saying a few words about what's been going on. So clearly there's an incredible amount to do, but we should all be clear and proud that in many areas, more has been done to fix, for example, the food system than at any time in the last 20 years. SNAP reform, grass reform, nutrition guidelines, revamping, all of these things are happening now. And they've been talked about for over a decade. But in the first year, in these three areas, we've got so much progress. And next year, we're going to see some of the most significant changes to US food labels in modern history. We've got, President Trump and Secretary Kennedy really in sync, in lockstep, to really pass historic reforms. And I think that these things can happen, and we on the outside can really help by coming together, by amplifying their messages. And, there's no question that we're fighting entrenched forces and that these battles are going to be tough and that we've got to really push Congress to do the things that they're supposed to do and push all of our politicians. And that's our role on the outside, to get together and to make things happen. So the thing we're going to focus on today is pesticide liability shields. This, I think there couldn't be anything that is more important to MAHA than making sure that we don't have pesticide liability protection for big corporations who are producing these products that cause cancer, that harm us in all kinds of ways, that that nobody should want. Nobody should want their children to be exposed to them. Nobody should want to be exposed to them themselves. And this really looks a lot like what's happening now, looks a lot like what happened in 1986 with the vaccine liability protection for these big companies. So these big pharmaceutical companies went to Washington and they said, look, vaccines are not safe. They're unavoidably unsafe. And because of that, so these are products that are going to harm people. We acknowledge that. But because we don't want millions of people to die, we need total protection. So that was a made up story. It was a lie. There are lots of things that could have been done to make vaccines safer. It's a very complicated question, but these are just products, and every product has to be able to stand on its own. And people have to be able to sue if the product doesn't work or if it harms people. And so, there's nothing more important right now. And we're going to have a whole bunch of people on who are going to talk about specific things you can do to help in this process of making sure that this addition to the appropriations bill gets shot down and that we don't have this liability protection in America, so that these companies know that they can't just produce these products and push them on all of American children, adults, and do this incredible harm to us. So we really want all of you to fight, and we're going to just have these people on who are going to tell you things you can do. So the next person is Russell Brand. He may not tell you exactly what to do, but he will get you excited about what needs to be done.
Oh. Russell's not quite on yet, so we should probably move to Kelly.
Okay, let's go then to Kelly Ryerson.
Sorry, I'm probably not going to be as inspiring as Russell would have been, but I'll try. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Kelly Ryerson. I'm glyphosate girl on Instagram, and I've worked for over a decade on pesticide and food issues. So right now, the last actually many months have been all consuming dealing with this pesticide liability shield. It's really the time. And thank you, Tony, and to everyone at MAHA, because it can feel really lonely. And when you have this whole big team behind you, it makes you feel like we can do something. It was like a perfect clip. So if we could start the slides, I'm going to give you guys a little overview of how we got to this situation, because it's not really out of nowhere. Could you move the slide? Yeah. Okay, next one. So go back. Yeah, perfect. So in 2015, the International Agency for Research on Cancer concluded, this is an organization that bases its evaluations on carcinogenicity of chemicals only on independent peer-reviewed research. So no industry research is allowed into their analysis. They concluded that glyphosate is a likely probable human carcinogen. So when that happened, you saw this explosion of lawsuits in the United States starting in 2018 around non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. This is the case here on the right. This is the one that Bobby famously fought, and which is why, unfortunately, he's had to recuse himself from a lot of this issue because he was one of the original lawyers that sued. So what was said, long and short of it, of these trials, it was very evident that Monsanto knew that glyphosate could cause cancer. In 2018, Bayer bought Monsanto, so now this is a Bayer issue. And many have talked about that conflict of interest of pharma owning now the food supply. It's horrendous. Anyway, so in the trials unveiled all of this corruption, all of this collusion between the EPA and Monsanto, and all the tactics that they used, including ghostwriting research to make sure that glyphosate would still be approved. It was really egregious, and that is why they have had to set aside $16 billion for settlements, and they're still ongoing. There's still 60,000 cases that are unsettled, and they are still rising by the day. Now, the EPA to this day says that it doesn't cause any concern for human health. They based their conclusions on a lot of ghost-written research provided by industry and very little peer-reviewed independent research. So that's why you had a different conclusion with IARC versus what the EPA is saying. Next slide. So with these lawsuits, you can see this crash, absolutely abysmal crash in Bayer's stock price. I mean, you've never seen such an absolutely large failure in an M&A transaction. This acquisition of Monsanto was a horrible idea. They are now stuck with this big aspect of liability with glyphosate litigation, and they are desperate to find a way out because they are likely going to bankrupt or need to spin out their crop sciences division entirely and bankrupt it because it's putting them underwater. Next slide, please. Once again, just to remind you, during the trials themselves, the EPA released in the middle of the big $2 billion glyphosate trial with the Piliads, the couple that got cancer, the EPA released a reminder for the court that the EPA still thinks that glyphosate doesn't cause cancer. Like, there was no reason to send that message in except that the EPA definitely is playing on behalf of corporations. To this day, despite all the evidence, they're saying there is no risk to humans. Next slide, please. So Bayer has come up with this corporate strategy. They actually put in a new CEO, and they released what they're going to do to temper the flare up from investors who are now wondering whether they made an incorrect investment. And what they have done is, first, they have swapped out the glyphosate in all of the home care or home landscape products. So you might have seen some people talking about this. In Home Depot, if you go now to buy Roundup, it actually has diquat in it, which is 40 times more toxic. It's a new, much more toxic thing, but they needed to get glyphosate out of it just to stop all of the lawsuits that are coming from glyphosate. And just to back up 1 second, I should have said, they could still sell glyphosate if they're willing to put a cancer label on their product. So if they said some research shows that glyphosate causes cancer, period, put it on at the products, this would be a moot issue. Farmers could still use it, people could still use it, but they won't do it. They would rather bankrupt themselves than do that. So anyway, so they came up with this strategy and said, okay, we're gonna get profitable again. We're gonna swap out all the land care. We are going to hide behind the EPA by passing these state and federal liability shields to prevent these failure to warn claims. So a lot of these lawsuits that are bankrupting Bayer are coming at the state level courts where victims are saying, hey, you didn't warn me that this could cause cancer. So they're losing, Bayer is losing repeatedly. So Bayer is saying, okay, I think we need to get this failure to warn situation just no longer an option. Let's just make it whatever the EPA says is going to be the law of the land. So they've done this, and so they've started this liability shield, which is why we're here. They also have recently submitted to the Supreme Court. They want to appeal some trial decisions that they want the Supreme Court to effectively say, whatever the EPA says is law. State laws don't hold any weight here, no failure to warn claims. And so right now that's sitting over at the White House with the Solicitor General, who has to come up with the decision whether or not he thinks that the Supreme Court should hear this case or not. They tried it under the Biden administration, and the Biden White House said, we don't think you should hear this case. So now they're trying again with Trump, which will be interesting to see. Next slide, please. So now let's talk immunity bills. So probably you guys have seen this egregious reach into state legislatures to pass immunity shields at the state level. So these immunity shields are protecting chemical companies, not just glyphosate, all these pesticides. And so if you get sick, you cannot sue in state court. So that passed in Georgia and North Dakota. They tried this on a federal level 2 times under the Biden administration, one with the Agricultural Labeling Uniformity Act. It didn't go anywhere. And then they tried to slide it into the Farm Bill, the House version of the Farm Bill. And hardly any legislator knew that that even existed. It was like on page 793, hidden away. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to hide it so people don't know. Currently, you have ongoing situations at the state level, including North Carolina, which is very active right now. And what we saw this week is the House Appropriations Bill. So what they've done is they are trying to sneak this into what is just a spending bill as a rider. And it's very tricky language what they put in there so that a lot of the Congress people don't understand that this is effectively a liability shield. And so this week it was in the Appropriations Committee, and that's what it passed through. Next slide, please. So here it is. This is the appropriations bill for fiscal year 2026. It's now through the Appropriations Committee. It will likely go through the Rules Committee next, and then it will hit the whole floor of the House. So we have this period of time where we can really fight back and get Congress on board with this. There will also be an appropriations bill that comes out of Senate. Now, we haven't seen it yet, but it's expected that there will be similar language over there. And what this appropriations bill does is it blocks funding to update labels on pesticides. So the EPA, so let's say I'm Bayer and I decide I'm going to admit that glyphosate causes cancer. I decide I'm going to admit that. And so I tell the EPA, as Bayer, can you please put a cancer warning on that? Well, the EPA will no longer be able to put a cancer warning update on it because they're effectively freezing everything in place as it is now. And they're saying, oh, okay, thank you for that information, Bayer. We're going to start a whole new reassessment and see if we agree with that suggestion that it might cause cancer or not. So that could be anywhere from 10 to 15. I mean, it could be indefinite where the EPA wouldn't even do the study to find out. So then it gets more complicated. I'm sorry, this is getting complicated. So then if Bayer is then sued because I get cancer from exposure, Bayer can say, well, the EPA wouldn't let us update the label. It's the EPA's fault. So they're transferring that liability, and that's how it's serving as a liability shield. But you can see that that's complicated to sit down and explain to Congress people because it takes a few mental steps. But effectively, this is going to cause delays on updates of 57,000 different pesticide products. Once again, companies can claim that even if they wanted to update the label warnings, the EPA won't let them. It puts families at risk of losing their right to hold companies accountable when their loved ones get sick. And so our kids pay the price while chemical giants get richer. And so this will impact not just glyphosate, as I said, it's 57,000 pesticides. And notably, atrazine and paraquat are included in that. Atrazine is the horrendous endocrine disruptor, and paraquat is so tightly linked to Parkinson's that China has outlawed it. Yet ChemChina, the manufacturer of paraquat, sells it here. And now we'll have legal immunity if we get Parkinson's and we want to sue ChemChina because they knew that paraquat caused Parkinson's disease. So it's really giving this gift to foreign chemical companies to give them immunity, both Bayer being German and ChemChina being Chinese. Next, please. Okay, so these are some things that we can do. I feel very activated. I think we can do it because no one in their right mind wants chemical companies to have liability protection. They just need to know that this is the case. So calling on all of you to ask people and all of your followers to contact Congress people and tell them to vote against this appropriations bill, which includes this liability shield called Section 453. as I was saying, the senators don't have their version out yet, but it's not too soon to be calling your senators and letting them know that you stand against any language in any bill that would be providing immunity to chemical companies. I've set up a place where you can go and sign up called stoppoison.org. You can go there and you put in your information. You can share this with everyone. You put in your state and your name and your email, and I will put you into an organized list. So when that state comes up for state liability, I can contact those people directly to attack that. And then I'll use all of the list to address the federal issue too. And then finally, on my website, Glyphosate Facts, I have an article that will describe basically everything I said, because I said it rather quickly. You could go and check. So that is where we are. If you have questions, please reach out to me, kelly@americanregeneration.org. That's a new organization I started with Ryland Engelhardt, supporting farmers in regenerative farming. And this is something we're committed to because we want to protect farmers' health. So you can find me there. And I guess I'll hand it back to you. Thank you.
So am I up now, Tony?
Yeah, let's go to Dr. Robert Malone. Thanks so much for coming on from your travels. And
Yep. Kelly, I just wanted to say what a fantastic job you just did with that slide deck. It's a comprehensive review and summary of the current legislative standing. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Dr. Meryl Nass, who will be following, who kindly provided really an excellent summary of many of the points that you just made, that she wrote on short notice and allowed us to publish for her in our Substack. Many thanks to both of you. My message here on behalf of MAHA Action is that all of those listening in should immediately make the association to the consequences of the liability waiver legislation that was passed for vaccines. And if the issue of pesticides, herbicides, and these other toxins that for the most part are banned here in Europe, where I am right now, which, by the way, puts the lie to the assertion that farmers need to have access to these products in order to generate a profit and produce their product. They don't need to have access to those products here in Europe. They're not needing to use desiccants, for instance, to mature their grain for harvest. So what we're encountering here is something that is right at the heart of the Make America Healthy Again movement, even if you'll tolerate it, even more than the vaccine agenda. We're talking about our entire food supply pretty much being contaminated by these products, and having legislation put through that'll make it almost impossible for us as consumers to do anything about it. Another anecdote: one of the problems with a lot of these products is wind drift. I have my farrier had I have horses. My farrier is coming to me lately. His neighbor applied high level of Roundup to some of the lands that turns out was actually owned by my farrier. And he's having a lot of toxicity to his horses now, founder, pregnancy loss, etc., that he attributes to the glyphosate. So for anybody that's trying to homestead or organic farm, the presence of these materials in adjacent farms is a major problem. It's really hard to get them out of your soil and out of the ecosystem that you have. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you aren't mad now, you damn well should be. You should be mad as hell, and you should be trying to do something about it. And the something that you have to do, as far as I'm concerned, is sign up on Kelly's site, get active, make a noise, make it clear that this is not acceptable, that we again go through this rodeo of providing indemnification to industry that's associated with toxic products. that are poisoning our children, poisoning our water supply, poisoning our food supply, etc. It's just not okay. And right now, as Kelly eloquently pointed out, this is all being stealthified. It's all being set up to be flown under the radar so that the general populace is asleep for it, doesn't really recognize it. Most of the Congress critters don't know that it's happening. And so they're unaware because they don't read the bills and they don't make sense out of what's going on in the bills. And as many of you that are legislatively sophisticated, you know that there are all kinds of tricks to split up language into different parts of the bill. So you basically have to have an artificial intelligence tool to even figure out what the heck's going on, except for you have Kelly Ryerson and Meryl Nass to do it for you. So that's my go get them message is if you don't like what happened with vaccine indemnification, you're really not going to like what happens with pesticide and herbicide indemnification. And you better get on the stick now. The people the people before us were a little bit asleep at the switch when the vaccine manufacturers put pressure on Congress and on the president to get that indemnification through. We can't let that happen. And again, we don't need these products. We don't need to feed the world. We just put out a great essay about Earl Butz and the consequences of the whole logic in the 60s of get big or get out in agriculture that basically destroyed the small towns and a lot of what's pejoratively called the flyover states. This is a bad set of legislation, and it very much is aligned and akin to what happened in the vaccine industry. And you know how hard it is for us to overcome that. This is going to be even harder. It's going to be coded in. Again, we don't need it. The third world doesn't need our cheap corn and soybeans. It's destroying their indigenous agriculture by substituting free stuff from the United States that, as we know, because we're part of MAHA, a lot of that material is not high quality food stuff. And so this logic that we're going to feed the world by producing cheap grain, using desiccants, etc., it just doesn't hold water. And we have to put a stop to it, in my opinion. And we have to go back to healthier foods. And this is exactly the wrong direction for that. And it is right in the sweet spot for the Make America Healthy Again movement. And I'm so glad that people like Kelly and Meryl and Tony and all of you here are providing leadership to just say no. Get mad, make a noise. This is something that really matters. And I think it is a place where pressure on social media and congressional pressure can really make a difference. And I'll leave you with one little example. Some people, including myself, made a big fuss, including Meryl, about the international health regulations. And we weren't a big organized effort. We were a small little band of pirate dissidents raising a little noise, writing things on Substack and on social media about the international health regulations. And it caught the attention of the administration, and we won on that the other day. And both Bobby and the Secretary of State rejected the IHR amendments that Tedros has jammed through. And then rapidly, Giorgio Meloni here, I'm in Italy, followed. So Italy rejected those also. And it's a credit to you people that are here, to people like Meryl, to people like Kat Lindley, that stood up, made a noise, said hell no, got the attention of the leadership, and they acted. So my point is, we can do that too on this topic. And I hope that you join us in making as much noise as we possibly can so that they don't succeed in kind of flying this under the radar and sneaking it in the bills. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Robert. Next up, we have Zen Honeycutt. But before that, I'd just like to say, and I just want to keep on saying it, that everybody who's listening should post on their Instagram, on their Facebook, on X, on any platform that they're on, that we need the whole world to know that MAHA is an army, that it represents millions and millions of people, and that we're just not willing to accept this kind of legislation, that we're going to fight it to the end, and that our votes are tied to people responding to the things that we want. Zen, take it away.
Thank you so much, Tony and Kelly and Robert Malone. I really appreciate all of you. And everybody watching, thank you for sharing this information. I think one of the best ways that we can be effective is to be well educated. And I'm going to share with you a few facts about why this is so important. Of course, speaking up is essential, and speaking up with some of the facts that are really disturbing that I'm going to share with you, that a lot of especially Republican elected officials do not know, and will speak to what's important to them. Of course, Kelly already mentioned that these pesticide immunity shields will cover 57,000 chemicals. That includes household chemicals, chemicals that are in our baby care products, our body care products. So it's not just pesticides. Also, if you look up the GAO, that's a government database, you'll see that there's 4,000 chemicals that have been allowed for emergency use authorization. That's just like the COVID vaccine or drugs, right? They're given emergency use authorization without any safety testing. And there's 4,000 pesticides that have been authorized for that purpose. So that means that there is not a lot of safety regulation or isn't the actual safety regulation going on that the Republicans are being told that is happening. So that's extremely concerning. 86 chemical pesticides we have identified have been banned in other countries, including China, Europe, and Brazil. And out of those 86 banned chemicals, we have a document we're handing out. I don't have a presentation like Kelly did because I'm in DC and I've been meeting with MAHA caucus members and representatives and staffs and stuff. So we're handing out one of these documents. It's called Stop the Reproductive Crisis. It is on Moms Across America under action and downloads, right? And so everything in red here, these are the 86 pesticides that have already been banned. And in other countries, the top ones are 2,4-D, atrazine, dicamba, glyphosate, and paraquat. Most of you know those. They cause a lot of health issues. Everything in red is where there's reproductive damage. So infertility, sterility, micropenis, birth defects, menstrual problems, all of that. And out of these 86 pesticides, we've identified that 78% of them cause reproductive damage. The other 22%, we simply don't know because there's no safety studies on them, right? They've allowed them for emergency use authorization. Some of them have been allowed to be used for 10 years. This is absolutely unacceptable. And if by any chance somebody wanted to not allow these 86 pesticides to be used on our food supply that are banned in other countries, they would still have 1,067 pesticides left. So we're not talking about, farmers not having tools. We're talking about not using the ones that, or not giving a pesticide immunity shield to the ones that we know have already been banned in other countries, right? That just makes sense. So, we need to remind our Republican senators and elected officials that we are in a reproductive crisis right now. America has less than the 2.1 birth rate that is needed for a society to be sustainable. And that by allowing things like glyphosate at drift level only, somebody mentioned very small amounts. Dr. Malone mentioned very small amounts at drift level only. Glyphosate, that's 1/40th of the normal application. Glyphosate reduces the nutrient uptake into the root of a plant by 20 to 85%, and into the shoot of the plant by 80 to 95%. And those minerals are zinc, magnesium, and iron. Those are the essential minerals for our immune system. So folks, this is why we're sick. Drift level exposure only of glyphosate gives us such a low amount of minerals in our food supply that it cannot sustain our immune system. So the nutrient deficiency alone is reason for banning glyphosate and for not allowing, of course, a pesticide immunity shield. And I just want to say one more thing. I know we don't have much time, but I want to say one more thing about the argument that the Republicans are getting from the lobbyists is that this pesticide immunity shield doesn't cause, doesn't actually cause immunity, and because it doesn't prevent lawsuits. And technically, they're accurate because, I could file a lawsuit against anybody for just looking at me funny. Anybody can file a lawsuit, right? It doesn't prevent you from filing a lawsuit, but it does prevent people from winning. And I'm sure Meryl Nass will go through this in detail. But what I just wanted to summarize and make sure is said is that it does prevent people from winning because it puts all of the onus on the EPA and FIFRA. And 243 actually says that the EPA cannot, relabel any guidance, any regulation, and make any changes. It actually says cancer classification. They just want to freeze the cancer classifications, any changes to that. And they don't want any changes made unless there's a full human health assessment. And the last full human health assessment was 1993. So it essentially freezes 30 years of science. We can't use them. And the clause, any other act, is in there. And so that means any other act that's introduced by any other elected official or any other regulatory agency. So that means that the FDA, the USDA, the CDC, any other agency, i.e. run by Bobby or anybody else, can't issue chemical guidance if this passes. That cuts Bobby off not only at the knee, but at the waist. I mean, this stops everything that MAHA is going for. So yes, get mad and get verbal and contact them. Everybody go to Kelly's thing, go to Moms Across America. On our website too, we have a store. We have these flyers. If you want to get active locally, in person, these flyers that we have with a QR code, you can pass these out at summertime events, camping, wherever you are, and gather a group personally, locally, around you as well, okay? So that you have a team of people, not just for this effort, but if they put a 5G tower in your town, if they're spraying Roundup in your town, get connected with people, not just on social media, but in your town. Those are the people that are going to bolster you up, that are going to meet with you in person, that's going to connect with you and have you feel like you have a posse. We need to meet with people in person just as much as online. So please go to momsacrossamerica.org, sign up for our newsletter, for our actions alerts. We also started the Moms Across America movement. It's a 501c4, and that way we can do this advocacy work that we're doing in DC full on. We are championing policy and public servants who put children, health, safety, and America's future first. So we're going to be highlighting MAHA candidates, supporting them to get into office, and also championing policy that puts MAHA first. So please, everybody, get involved. Thank you so much for sharing this information with everybody. I believe we're going to win and we're going to stop this. I really do.
Thanks so much, Zen. And now we have Russell Brand.
Well, that was a very abrupt introduction, if I may say so, Tony. I was really learning quite a lot there from Zen. Thank you so much. And I was recently in attendance at would you prefer me this way? Is that better for you? I was at the MAHA event in DC recently as 2 days ago. And it was wonderful to participate in something. There was so much enthusiasm and information. And to hear what's been outlined already in this call by the never less than impeccably dressed and almost unbearably handsome Robert Malone, the equestrian wonder that's, I think, more elegant than one of his dressage horses, which I understand he has. I love you, Robert. I hope you know that, sir. And I also spent some time with Lisa Oz and Dr. Oz, and I also had it brilliantly explained to me that at the state level, Bayer, which is different in my accent, I think you lot say bear, but in my accent, that's Bayer were campaigning to essentially truncate the ability of the MAHA movement and its leaders in office to operate on the mandate that's been so clearly afforded by the electorate. I understood a lot of things from attending that event that previously were not clear to me. And I just would let you know that the brilliant data, so expertly compiled on this call, can be, I hope, disseminated by me and others that have the advantage of small media, independent media organizations. I mean, look, there's some cameras right there and microphones. If you can give anything you want to send me in the chat, anything you think that I can highlight or illuminate, let me know. And frankly, it can't be simple enough, because I have a sort of an astonishing inability to compile, understand, and appreciate information. And I really, the number of times people have tried to tell me what cryptocurrency is, and I'm still absolutely baffled. I'll tell you that. What I did understand when Jim O'Neill explained it to me very brilliantly, and maybe it was Aaron Siri. Certainly, it was some kind of MAHA expert. But when there was a kind of organic fruit and vegetable craze, I think in the late 90s, people stopped trusting food that had been treated by pesticides, concerned that it was carcinogenic, that it may impact fertility, and certainly that its nutritional value was dubious. And therefore, big agriculture and their partners in pesticide needed to create some data that nullified the increasing threat that people would return to locally grown, not even locally grown, man, just organic food. But gosh, imagine a world in which locally grown food or locally reared food, or essentially the kind of local economies that Helena Norberg Hodge has advocated for 50 years, and that Vandana Shiva has done such extraordinary work to ensure doesn't entirely immerse Indian agriculture, with her bold stance against Monsanto, which I think they've been acquired by Bayer, is that right? These are the kind of leaders that we have to highlight. These are the kind of women that should be participating along with some of the other brilliant people on the call. Anyway, they explained to me that what the big agricultural company in question and its pesticide partners were able to fund were studies at, I think it was Stanford University, where they needed to find a way of nullifying the threat of organic fruit. So they contrasted organic fruit with fruit that had been grown using pesticides. And in order to ensure that they got the result they required, they tested it only for presence of certain vitamins. So they were able to say, hey, look, they were able to say that organic fruit and pesticide treated fruit, they're precisely the same. There's no difference. I.e., the very metrics that are used to convey information and offer empirical outcomes are determined and decided by powerful interests. So if anyone's bold enough to say, trust the science, follow the science, let alone this literal Exodus-worthy, I am the science, I am the science, Anthony Moses Fauci, then you should know that information has been pre-chewed and has been pre-tested and has been packaged in a way that even Bill Gates would be impressed by. I understand that he's created some sort of terrible lacquer that goes over fruit these days. Perhaps they developed that on Epstein Island. Who's to say? Who would ever know how they develop a lacquer that goes on fruit? What a terrible image. Who knows what that plasma consists of? Anyway, I'm very grateful to participate with all of you. I recognize that my primary value can be in amplifying the fantastic voices that are already in office in this movement and are advocating for those voices in media and on this call. So if that can be of any use or service to you, then please let me know. And with that, and with my thanks to Tony and Dr. Oz and Zen, I will hand back. Thank you very much.
Russell, thanks so much. You're always so incredibly inspiring.
Hey, wait, Gary Brecka's there. Because I still owe him a thanks for an infrared bed that he provided for my dog. Gary, I love as well. And I spent a long time telling everyone how much I love Gary Brecka, and he weren't on the call, so it was a lot of wasted sycophancy. So, let me repeat that sycophancy now. I love you, Gary Brecka.
I love you too.
And I would like to just welcome Cheryl Hines. Thanks for being on with us.
So happy to be here. I'm so happy I'm not missing this.
That's great. So the next person that we have is Dr. Eric Berg.
All right, great. So I have my Roundup ready, all set to spray on my corn. I was driving down this street. I live in the farm area. I was driving down this road, and I saw this fully packed, decked out person, completely in protected gear, spraying this corn. I'm like, wow. Then I tested my my water in my house, and it was city water. And it was 27,000% higher than normal as far as a certain it's a forever chemical. And so, and I had a water filter. So these pesticides are a real problem. But what I'm going to talk about is, big pharma, big ag, big food, they don't communicate directly. They communicate through PR firms that then set up front groups, grassroots astroturfing, and that's how they communicate. So their power really is through hidden connections. And this is why social media is so important, especially influencers, because just in one video that I did, I was able to raise $1 million for the South Carolina victims of the floods. So the power of social media is just massive. And those of us that have a voice, some of us didn't have, got our voices destroyed from speaking up, but now is a much better time to speak because it's a little bit safer than it was 4 years ago. Sarah, they put him on the dirty dozen list just for communication. I mean, it's just insane. So, social media could be used for good or for evil. And what's fascinating is social media it literally collapses the physical universe because you can communicate through space in a nanosecond for free without any energy. You don't need a brick and mortar. You don't need stamps. You can use the money from the platforms to communicate and do a viral video and shine a big light on these weak points that big pharma has, big ag, and just really destroy their power because their power is really in the hidden communications. I just want to cover just a few front groups that just are beautifully crafted, but they're completely fake. Citizens for Patient Safety, Partnership to Protect Patient Health, America Action Network, Doctors for America, Committee to Protect Human Health, Voices for Vaccines, Parents Who Vax, Safe Community Coalition. These sound like just wonderful organizations, completely funded, completely faked. And that's kind of what we're dealing with. We have this battle online, which is trying to control public opinion. And it's very vulnerable to have these fake groups and these ghostwriters and all these lies, because as soon as we reveal them and shine a big light, it destroys their power. So we're going to be going forward. We're going to be putting out. We'll have various messages for various things, because I know our social media network is composed of several groups, and so we'll have at least 4 different messages that we can go through. But today we're focusing primarily on the pesticide issue, which is a massive issue. So just to summarize, we're in a PR war, and we're going to win this if we work together and we're smart about it, and we have better arguments, and then that's how we're going to win this war.
Thanks so much, Dr. Berg. I think that's so important to sort of recognize that we've all been lied to, and that there are all these fake groups out there that have been created by the companies that are making billions of dollars at our expense. And, so the only way we can really fight back is to find common ground between each other and really just push hard, really have hundreds and hundreds of millions of posts on social media so that the general public gets some kind of balance. Because when millions and millions of people are lied to on a daily basis, it's really hard for them to tell the truth or to know the truth, to recognize the truth. And so our job is to get that information in front of them. Gary Brecka, let's hear your perspective.
Hey guys, thank you. First of all, great presentations, everyone. Kelly, Zen, Dr. Malone, Russell, love you too. Hope your dog's doing well. I've got him under red light panels now. I have a platform called the Ultimate Human Platform. By the grace of God, it's become one of the largest media platforms in the world for wellness, for longevity. There is an enormous, to Dr. Berg's point, interest in the MAHA agenda. And I've found the MAHA messaging to be very bifurcated, very cumbersome, although very legitimate. I've found it to be very bifurcated and very cumbersome, almost like we're not speaking with one voice. One of the things I think great political campaigns, great movements, whether they're sinister movements or whether they're beneficial movements, have done, historically, is they've sung from the same hymnal. And I'm deeply appreciative of the MAHA Action Committee because I think for the first time in the myriad of really consequential and legitimate possibilities that we could be messaging about, we're distilling down to where is the urgency, urgency around pesticide indemnification because there are bills moving through Congress. Dr. Berg and I have had a number of conversations about this. Between the two of us, our platforms get hundreds of millions of views a month. And the reason why I highlight that is because we really do have the power now. We can message around the media. We can get this agenda out. We can popularize it, and we can actually help people to take action. I wanted to do a number of things on this call. Number one, I wanted to offer to amplify the voices of the folks on this call. Our podcast platform sits at the number one position in the world for wellness and longevity. It's called the Ultimate Human Platform. So I'd really love to invite Kelly, Zen, Dr. Malone. I would love to give you a voice so that we can add momentum to this. From those podcasts, we will create viral addictive clips to grab attention. And I will drive that attention to the different initiatives, right now to MAHA, the MAHA Action Committee, and to the different initiatives in terms of their urgency. Rather than just messaging to wake people up and make them angry, I'd love to message in a place where their activity could have real consequence. And so having a legitimate structure to how we message this, we've sort of perfected messaging. We will take messages from a podcast, then we will broadcast them to what is a shadow ban proof social media strategy. And yes, all of us in this space, the Vani Haris, the Kelly Means, myself, Dr. Berg, Casey Means, we get shadow banned, whether these social media companies want to admit it or not. We've unlocked a really proven defensive strategy so that instead of getting 3-4 million views on a video, we'll get 100 million, 140 million, 160 million views. The idea is not just to create awareness, but to create action driven at the most urgent topics of the day. Which seems to me to be this, the pesticide indemnification agenda that's going on right now. And not just to, I don't want to use the term waste, but to spend time grabbing attention to announce legislative wins, in petroleum-based food dyes and the SNAP program and what have you, but to actually drive action to where it matters most. I've also had a blessing to, be very close to some of our Republican, political operatives and congressmen. Just had a long talk with Governor Youngkin from Virginia. They're all subscribed to this agenda, but they don't have the time or the wherewithal or the inclination to really understand it. So I think, being very simple in our messaging, for me, there's no greater calling in life than the possibility that I'm a small part of a group that's affecting public policy for our future generations. It is just absolutely astounding to me that my children, of which I have 4, have, statistically speaking, a shorter life expectancy than I do. I spent 22 years in the mortality space as a mortality researcher for large life insurance. I worked for Swiss Re, Gen Re Securities, GE Capital, some of the biggest mortality databases in the world. I promise you, if those databases could see the light of day, it would permanently change the face of humanity. It would upend modern medicine in a way that would be catastrophic. And what we knew from big data, 371 million lives, and analyzing the day, the date, the time, the location, and the cause of death in that pool, was that we are slowly micro-poisoning ourselves to death. The greatest theory in aging right now, I think any great longevity expert would agree with this, is the theory of immunofatigue. We are starting in the prepubescent years to wipe out the immune system, the innate God-given immune system that we have, not just with vaccines, but with microtoxins that accumulate over time. It is not the dosage that determines the poison. It is the cumulative dosage that determines the poison. And from a cumulative basis as a nation, we have the largest toxic burden of any civilized nation in the world. And so our message is resonating, and the opportunity for us to now distill that down into very finite points where we can drive action to affect legislation, in my opinion, will be where this organization will have the greatest impact. So three things. Number one, I wanted to thank Robert for giving me the term Congress critters. I like that term. I'm going to start using that now. I'm going to weave that into my narrative. I have an astounding media run that begins on August 1st and accumulates in a big event at Mar-a-Lago on December 16th that will reach 100 million U.S. citizens directly with a message from this organization. And so I need direction for where we want that message to land. That would be very helpful. And secondly, and this includes, major media publications. It's culminating in a keynote speech at Davos next year, where I've been asked to speak on the state of MAHA and the agenda on the international health initiatives. And they're not going to like what I have to say, but I'm going to say it. And so, I wanted to extend that invitation to you to come onto the platform so that we can start with a podcast. This goes into newsletters. It goes into what we call evergreens. It goes into 1,600,000 hotel rooms worldwide. We broadcast to all 9,000 hotel locations and all 1.6 million hotel rooms in the Marriott chain globally. So rather than just get people excited and upset, I want to drive their action to initiatives where it matters. And clearly from this call, it seems that the most urgent priority is around pesticide indemnification. If we could develop a sequence of the next series of really important initiatives where attention can become motivation, can lead to action. We're experts at taking that information, not only creating awareness, but giving people, when they're mad, something they can do. And much to Zen's point, I think, they need to be on the phones talking to their state and local representatives, to their congressmen. And we need to get the message out, much to Tony's point, that we can actually influence voters in your region. And so for those of you that are on the marginal line of elections coming up here in the midterms and then in 2028, you need to be adhering to the MAHA agenda if you really want to swing some of those voters that are in independent or undecided states onto your side of the ledger. And this is something that the vast majority of America cares about. So maybe when we're done, any one of you can reach out to my team, info@theultimatehuman.com, info@theultimatehuman.com. I would love to have Kelly, Zen, Dr. Malone. I would love to have you on the platform. I would love to develop a media strategy around your narrative. And rest assured, I will do everything I can when I get off this call to organize around this pesticide indemnification urgency that we have. So it's a blessing to be on the call with so many purpose, passion-driven, people, and it's a blessing just to be a part of this organization. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Gary. That was really great. And I mean, I think that your point and Dr. Berg's point that we have the power, that we have so much more power than the New York Times or the Washington Post or Politico or Axios or any of those places that really have so few readers and in the scheme of things are so insignificant, that we have hundreds of millions of followers, of views in this group. And this group is just getting started. And I think that we need to make sure that politicians all across the country know that we have that power and that we're going to wield that power and that we're not kidding around. We're very serious about these issues and we're going to fight to the very end. So I think somebody who's been fighting for many, many years is Sayer G.
Hey guys, wow. So cool to tune in, and Gary, just really feel your heart. It's amazing and it's so needed. And everyone else who spoke, the beauty of the situation is that, while there's some dissonance and there's a lot of fracturing around what MAHA is, and even within the movement, some of my greatest allies are the biggest critics. And, that's really beautiful too, because that's the era we're in, right? There's no longer, this, very, serious censorship of so many voices. So we're even experiencing some of that. And what I mean by that is like, okay, so Bobby mentions wearables. I've been using an Oura Ring for years. I love it. It has the airplane mode, so I'm not concerned about EMF. But there's been like almost no discussion in our space over the fact that this is one of the best ways to take control of your health, especially with preventable chronic diseases, right? So, I've been a little bit out of the picture here because of actually being subject to some serious lawfare related to disinfo dozen categorization and all of the assaults that have occurred on activists. So that's actually my point, which is that we're in this situation right now because, just like we've discussed, the vaccine industry was dealing with an existential threat in the 80s, largely due to the injuries and the lawsuits for DTP. The vaccine industry they were even threatening, we're not going to produce our life-saving vaccines if you don't give us immunity. So the 1986 Act accomplished that. There were some well-meaning people, of course, involved in that, like Barbara Loe Fisher, and there were some good things that happened, but essentially it completely caused an exponential increase in vaccine-induced brain damage, which is what they're claiming is an idiopathic syndrome, right? Autism. So essentially, Bobby, here, the person who is in ways a pariah of his own movement, and even has worse critics within the grassroots than pharma itself, he won a massive win, right, against the chemical industry back in back in 2018 with a $290 million victory for a single plaintiff. So that was an existential, like, dinosaur meteor level event. And what followed was over 100,000 lawsuits. So Section 453, right, what we're dealing with right now is a sign of just how powerful an impact that had. And by the way, that was a jury trial. So you can't rig, the legal apparatus with a tribunal, at least not as easily. And that was what caused it was like kicking a hornet's nest. It was like opening up Pandora's box, because essentially a year later, we saw the Google, digital book burning event, the Google Medic update, where 99% of search results for natural health advocates were removed from Google. And then a year or two before, they signed $1 billion deal with GlaxoSmithKline, and they have their own pharmaceutical divisions, meaning big pharma took over the internet. And it was because they had to, because they literally were facing existential annihilation due to the activism of people like our HHS secretary, Bobby. So in many ways, what we're facing is a reflection of just how powerful the people are and why we're doing this event, and why MAHA Action and Kelly's work and Zen and Global Wellness Forum, Stand for Health Freedom, all the amazing organizations and verticals, personalities like you, Russell, like all the people that are coming together to amplify the truth is absolutely freaking out, the last guardians of the Kali Yuga, if you will, right? I mean, we're literally at an epochal shift, and it's because we're winning. So essentially, that's the good news. But, I think it helps to provide some context, because being basically knocked out of MAHA for the past month due to being faced with my own existential threats from lawfare, knowing a lot about Black operations, being on the disinfo dozen list, with memos being leaked about how they're putting Black operations on a presidential candidate, right? That was CCDH in 2024. We know they're pulling out all the tactics, and especially with things like Roundup, because if you look at it, back in 1993, which is what the EPA assessment is based on, which they're saying this is the immunity shield. You cannot go with guidance that deviates from 1993. They say glyphosate is safe, basically. It's low toxicity, even orally, right? You can drink it. Around the same time, though, there started to amass research, because back in 1993, it was 15 studies were being published on glyphosate. You can look it up on PubMed. And then around the time, like leading up to this lawsuit, we have about 500 or more articles a year. And they're showing, of course, that in the parts per quadrillion range, glyphosate is extremely toxic. It can induce a phenotypal shift in a healthy cell consistent with cancer, meaning even a higher dose will kill the cell, induce apoptosis or necrosis. It's not going to cause it to shift into an immortalized cell that can metastatize throughout your body. Meaning it even threatened the conventional toxicological model, right? Where, the dose makes the poison. The reality is less is more toxic in the case of glyphosate. And of course, it's ubiquitous. It's in our, all the rain samples taken. So the people wake up. Green Men Info is an example. Like, actually, since we started, we have now research on over 100 diseases connected with glyphosate exposure. Another reason why they tried to snuff us out. But in response to the growing awareness that, yes, absolutely, this ubiquitous toxicant is extremely dangerous. It needs to be absolutely eliminated. It should never be manufactured again. We see what has happened, right? Is that right now we're facing this. So here's what we decided to do, because having been, since 2012, actually, the military was found to be spying on GMO activists, right? Is we had to find a way to mobilize action at a grassroots level, because the military had already deployed operatives to infiltrate health freedom groups. Some of you might have run into this already. It's COINTEL 2.0. But they focused on health freedom. So we had fake groups in Florida. So we decided to start Stand for Health Freedom, which is a 501c4, and which has an incredible grassroots support when we're dealing with literally 1 million advocates at this point. And we're so happy about how successful the campaigns have been. For example, with the Exit the WHO campaign, we had over, what is it? Can you see my screen? Let's see. Or my page for, let's see, Stand for Health Freedom. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Can you guys see the Stand for Health Freedom?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's an example. So we have at present an action which anyone can take, which enables people to easily contact their House of Representatives with, a couple clicks. You can customize the message. It's exactly the technology we used, of course, when Bobby needed support for his confirmation to pretty much overrun the Capitol, right? Help to crash the phone lines. The same is true for this situation right now. All people have to do is use these verticals we've created. Okay, we don't want one centralizing entity to be, blasting the inboxes of these elected officials. It should be through all possible avenues. It should be social. It should be, Kelly's organization. It should be Zen, everybody. But essentially, we have seen people take literally seconds of their day en masse, coordinated in such a way that we're seeing literally the fall of the conventional power structure. So please use this action. It makes it very easy to communicate the issue to elected officials. We all know they don't have the time to really fully appreciate all of the research that goes into coming up with these, these solutions, but they're there for them, and all you have to do is take action. So once again, I feel like the situation at present is that we are winning at such a high level that some people in the movement are just not really fully aware of the impact even they're having. And there's a bit of the be careful fighting monsters, you might become one. And we all have to take a breath. We all have to appreciate each other, appreciate where we're at, and essentially, be adult about it. We may not win all of our, chosen objectives, but together we are having such incredible impact. So again, Tony, thank you so much for putting this together. And for everybody who's on the call, another shout out to Dr. Berg. I mean, this guy is just an animal when it comes to activating this massive network of media individuals who care deeply about these issues that don't want any credit at all. But it's also great to hear people like Gary are going to the top in Russell, and there's a global awareness of MAHA that other countries are jealous of. And so eventually I see this movement going completely global. And we're seeing it today, right? It's the Democrats that are supporting MAHA, and the Republicans are like, no, thank you, when it comes to this egregious bill. And that's an example of how this movement is going to outlive political divisions. And that's why we're in it. And that's what makes me so excited about it. So once again, thank you for hosting this. And let's just do our best to spread the word, because we have an existential crisis for pharma and the chemical industries. They know it, and there's only a few people really at the top that are pulling the strings. So feel good about where we're at, and let's just take it home. Let's make this happen.
Sarah, that was great to have you on. And I think it's a great point that we're winning, and that people have to get used to winning and stop going after each other. And there's been a lot of that, because if we really work together, I think there's just no limit to what we can do. That the fake accounts, bots, pharma-funded media, none of that can stifle really authentic voices. And the people on this call and the people listening to this call are just incredibly authentic people. And I think in the end, we can really win because of that. Awesome. So next we have Meryl Nass.
So I hope I'm unmuted. Bayer has been pointed out, been worried about its potential liability since 2018, when the case Bobby and Michael Baum were involved with got an incredible amount of money for his illnesses. He was a groundskeeper. He was highly exposed to glyphosate. And it turned out that non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cases have been growing tremendously. So when I was a young doctor, you hardly ever saw a case. And now it's one of the major cancers. And that may or may not have to do with glyphosate or the other pesticides, but it certainly may have something to do with it, and the extent of this chemical in our environment, which is everywhere. 80% of people have been found to have glyphosate in their blood. So Bayer has set up a $16 billion war chest, 16 billion, not million, to pay off claims that it, cases that it loses or settlements, and to fight future lawsuits. And it has a six-pronged strategy. It went to the Supreme Court. It's working at the state level, went to a lot of states and tried to get them to pass laws that would not allow cases to be brought at the state level. So you have federal cases and you have state cases. And in Georgia and in North Dakota now, you cannot bring a state case against Bayer. So they've done that. Also in the appropriations bill that the Appropriations Committee passed yesterday. So it hasn't gone to the full House and the full Senate, but the 63-member Appropriations Committee passed this bill yesterday, which not only gave a de facto liability shield to Bayer and to the rest of the hundreds of manufacturers of 57,000 pesticides. It also stopped work on taking PFAS out of sludge. That was part of the bill as well. That was voted down. EPA had a draft report saying that the PFAS in sewer sludge is a probable carcinogen, and that would have led to the EPA taking some action, and now that has been blocked in the bill. Another thing this bill did is reduce the total funding to EPA by 23%. So what Section 453 did in very opaque language is to basically say that no federal money can be spent by any agency to study is probably part of it. That might be left up to a court to decide, but to take any actions that will result in recommendations that are different from the EPA's, or a label that is different than what the EPA has established with the manufacturer. And the EPA the only way EPA is being allowed to change a label is to do a very deep dive and extremely detailed analysis of the science that takes years, and it's usually only done every 10 years or less, okay? And as we were told, the last official report on glyphosate, because later ones were not accepted, is from 1993. So for 32 years, EPA has not updated the warnings on glyphosate, even though all of the science has revealed many problems, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, as a result of this chemical. Now, Bayer didn't only create a war chest, but it organized several hundred other pesticide companies to work with it. So, and they are allied. It also went to both sides of the aisle in Congress and has been, we don't know what, but has been lobbying the Dems and the Republicans together. So we are facing a Goliath in terms of money, in terms of lobbying power, etc. And we are the David, but we have millions of people who believe that we shouldn't be poisoned, unless we choose to. And that's another interesting wrinkle in this, because Republican members of Congress have been instructed, I'm not sure who instructed them, whether it was their leadership or Bayer. They've been told that this rider that they passed yesterday has nothing to do with a liability shield. They've denied it. Many members of Congress have been denied that that's what they passed, but it is what they passed. All the Democrats put their feet to the fire yesterday and pointed out that was exactly what they passed, but they're denying it. And whether they are dumb, whether they've been miseducated, the head of the subcommittee did a very impressive acting job of a song and dance of berating the members of the committee for not understanding what he was telling them and believing that this was about a liability shield. He berated the MAHA moms that were calling the offices saying they'd all been misinformed. Well, we weren't misinformed. This, by freezing the label on these pesticides to what they are now, will stop EPA from updating them for many years in the future. And until they're updated, that those labels will be used to deny legal wins of plaintiffs who've been injured. So the failure to warn legal doctrine, which is how plaintiffs have won, and we've had something like 67,000 people win lawsuits or settlements because of failure to warn. That is what will go away. And that is what will, in fact, create the liability shield for all of these companies, okay? Now, up until now, only vaccines have ever been given any kind of liability shield. That's the only consumer product. if this goes through, it's opening the door for every other industry to go after a liability shield as well. Why not? If pesticides, which are one of the most dangerous class of consumer products there is, if they get the liability shield, why not plastics? You know, why not other things, drugs, for instance? So not only is it opening the door to other industries, but it's opening the door to pesticide companies to make their products less safe. They won't need to test them for safety anymore because they can't be sued as long as that, you know, rotten label that claims they're safe exists. So we have to educate, and fortunately, a lot of people did educate congressional members and their staffs. When they were told they didn't understand the bill writer, they said, no, you're the one who doesn't understand. So we have to educate, we have to insist we understand what this bill is about, and we have to hold their feet to the fire. That's critically important, and media have reported on it correctly, and the Dems did. You know, we're not wrong, but these people are very brazen, and they will attempt to tell us we're wrong and don't accept it. Why are they doing that? They're doing that because this is a very, very dirty piece of legislation. This, you know, harms their constituents in every way. It's telling their constituents, if you get cancer from one of these pesticides, you have no recourse, really. No one is going to take your case. You're just going to, you know, deal with your cancer on your own with no benefits. And it's telling their constituents that they're going to have a more dangerous products out there in the market if there's no ability to sue for injuries. So, but also the Republicans are shooting themselves in the foot because they're leaving themselves open to the Democrats. They've passed a poison pill, and the Democrats can say, you don't care about MAHA, you don't care about health, you don't care about safety. And that's what's coming down the pike for the Republicans. We have to help them realize they may be committing suicide if they continue to go along with this. Okay, so what else can we do? Yesterday, the Republicans said what they had to say, the Democrats said what they had to say, and then there was a vote. The vote was a voice vote. The Dems said, we want this out. The Republicans said, we want it in. And the chair of the committee, Tom Cole, said, the noes have it, so we're leaving it in. And he did that on the basis of how loud the speech was, whether you said aye or nay. Now, obviously, you cannot possibly count the votes by determining how loud everyone is shouting at that point. What should have happened, and what did happen earlier for other amendments and for the sewage sludge amendment, was that there was a roll call. That means every member of the committee has to say how they vote, aye or nay, and it's recorded for posterity and everyone will know. Well, in this case yesterday, none of the Republicans and none of the Democrats called for a roll call vote, which means everyone had really decided ahead of time that this was going to pass. This bill was going to go through. They were going to let the Dems were going to let the Republicans off the hook. Nobody was going to be getting in trouble by having their name associated with a vote for this legal, whatever you want to call it, this legal immunity shield. That gives us a lot of leverage because we can try to force a roll call vote in the full House and the Senate. And if there is a similar bill in the tucked into the Farm Bill, we can force votes there. We have to make these people commit themselves. If they are going to go against their constituents and favor the pesticide industry, they are going to have their name on that for posterity. The other thing is we have to point out that they have been misinforming us, and we're sick of that. We're not going to be fooled. and they shouldn't try that on us anymore. The days of misinformation and fake news need to be over. We need to demand truth from our representatives and embarrass them about the strategies they're using. So I think we can win this. We have to be very clever, but they've left themselves open. This is a terrible, terrible bill. It's a terrible precedent, and we need to defeat it, and I think we will. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Meryl. I mean, I think that it was a great point that you made, that that the Democrats wanted to make it look like they wanted to kill this bill, but they didn't really want to do that. They didn't want, like you said, their name on it. They didn't want their name associated with killing the bill because it would probably harm their fundraising. So, it's really just a terrible situation. And I think we, as the MAHA movement, representing so many millions of people, can push to get this taken out. I think we can succeed in it, and I think we should do everything we can to have that be the outcome. And then, when it comes to the midterms, I think that we really need to recognize and keep thinking through that we have to sort of act with one voice. That when this kind of issue comes up, we should fight it tooth and nail. But when it comes to the midterms, we have to be sure that Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy have the opportunity to complete the mission that they've laid out. And it's not going to be perfect, and we're going to disagree time after time. But we also know that that's the best outcome for Americans, the best outcome for our children, for the MAHA movement. So, that's a part of it too. So let's definitely be clear on that. We are running a program now where we've raised $2.5 million in the last month, and we're putting that into national advertising campaigns. And we have one small ad that we're going to show once I stop talking. But there are going to be hundreds and hundreds of these ads, and we're going to keep raising money to get our messages out through advertising, through social media, through lobbying, in any way we can. Thank you all so much for tuning into this show, and we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks on August 6th.
It's a new day in America. For too long, industry prioritized profit over public health. But change has come, quietly at first, and then all at once. MAHA isn't about politics. It's about people standing up and saying, enough. Right away, they took on toxic food dyes and loopholes that allow poisons into our food. They're cleaning up what we feed our kids, cracking down on toxic additives, and fixing dietary guidelines that made us sick. This is about what's real. Real choice, real food, real health. They're renegades, putting science over dogma, standing up, listening, telling the truth about food. This movement is already happening. Join us